The evening air was alive with energy as the city of Los Angeles buzzed under a canopy of stars. Nestled in the heart of downtown, an upscale restaurant stood like a beacon for those seeking fine dining and good company. Inside, the atmosphere was warm but sophisticated, with soft jazz playing faintly in the background and the gentle clinking of glasses echoing through the room. Patrons dressed in their finest attire filled the space, laughing, chatting, and savoring exquisite dishes, prepared by world-class chefs. It was one of those nights where everything seemed perfect, until perfection was interrupted by raw human behavior. At a corner table near the window, Vin Diesel sat quietly, his towering frame almost blending into the shadows despite his unmistakable presence. Known globally for his larger-than-life roles on the big screen, tonight he chose to be just another face in the crowd. He had come here after wrapping up a long day of filming, hoping to unwind over a simple meal without the glare of cameras or the weight of expectations. Dressed casually in a dark shirt and jeans, he looked more approachable than the action hero fans adored. Yet even in this relaxed setting, there was something magnetic about him, a quiet confidence that drew attention without demanding it. Around him, the restaurant thrived with life. Waitstaff moved swiftly between tables, balancing trays laden with gourmet meals while ensuring every guest felt cared for. Among them was Maya, a young black waitress whose grace and professionalism made her stand out. With a smile that could light up even the dullest corners of the room, she navigated the chaos effortlessly, attending to each customer's needs with precision and warmth. Her uniform, a crisp white blouse paired with black slacks, was immaculate, reflecting her dedication to her work. Despite the physical demands of her job, she carried herself with dignity, earning nods of approval from diners who appreciated her attentiveness. Maya wasn't new to this line of work. She had been serving tables since she was old enough to hold a tray. For her, it wasn't just a job. It was a way to support her dreams. Every tip she earned brought her closer to pursuing her passion for writing, a dream she hoped would someday take her far beyond the confines of this bustling eatery. But tonight her focus was entirely on making sure the patrons enjoyed their experience. She knew how important it was to keep the rhythm of the evening flowing smoothly, especially during peak hours when the restaurant was packed. As the clock ticked past 8 o'clock, the noise level began to rise. Conversations grew louder, laughter echoed off the walls, and the kitchen staff worked double time to keep up with orders. Amid the commotion, a group of men seated near the center of the room caught Maya's eye. They were dressed sharply in tailored suits, exuding an air of wealth and entitlement. Their table was littered with empty cocktail glasses and half-eaten appetizers, evidence of a night well underway. From the moment they arrived, they had commanded attention, not only from the waitstaff but also from other diners curious about their animated discussions and boisterous laughter. One man in particular stood out. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with slicked-back hair and a watch that gleamed under the dim lighting. His demeanor suggested he was used to getting what he wanted, whenever he wanted it. As Maya approached their table to refill their water glasses, she noticed the glint of mischief in his eyes. There was something unsettling about the way he watched her, as though sizing her up before deciding whether she was worth acknowledging. Still, she maintained her composure, offering a polite smile as she performed her duties. Unbeknownst to anyone, including Maya, this seemingly ordinary evening was about to take a dramatic turn. The tension simmering beneath the surface was invisible to most, hidden behind the veneer of civility that restaurants like this prided themselves on. Yet, it wouldn't stay hidden for long. Somewhere in the mix of clinking silverware, murmured conversations and the hum of activity, a storm was brewing, one that would test the limits of patience, courage, and humanity. In the midst of all this, Vin Diesel remained largely unnoticed at his corner table. He sipped his drink slowly, observing the scene around him with a detached curiosity. He had always been someone who preferred listening over speaking, watching over acting unless absolutely necessary. Tonight, however, fate seemed determined to pull him into the spotlight once again. Little did he, or anyone else, know that, within the next hour, Lives would intersect in ways no one could have predicted, leaving ripples of change that would linger long after the plates were cleared and the lights dimmed. The evening continued its steady rhythm, with the restaurant humming along like a well-oiled machine. Maya moved between tables with practiced ease, her movements fluid and efficient. She carried plates, refilled drinks, and answered questions about the menu without missing a beat. Her smile never faltered, even when faced with difficult customers or overly complicated orders. To her, every interaction was an opportunity to make someone's night just a little brighter. But as she approached the table of sharply dressed men for the third time that evening, something felt different. A subtle shift in the air, like the calm before a storm. At the center of the group sat the man who had caught her attention earlier. His suit was expensive, his posture relaxed but commanding. He leaned back in his chair, one arm draped casually over the backrest, while the other hand toyed idly with the stem of his wineglass. His companions laughed at something he said, their voices loud enough to draw glances from nearby tables. Maya could feel their eyes on her as she approached, though she tried not to let it unnerve her. After all, dealing with rowdy patrons came with the territory of working in such a popular establishment. "Excuse me," she said softly, her tone polite but firm as she stopped beside their table. "Can I get you, gentlemen, anything else?" For a moment, no one responded. The man in the center turned his head slowly, his gaze locking onto hers. There was a flicker of amusement in his expression, as if he found her presence both amusing and inconvenient. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a sharp edge that cut through the ambient noise of the room. "You know," he began. His words slurred slightly from the alcohol coursing through his system. "We've been waiting forever for our main course. What's taking so long?" Maya hesitated, taken aback by the accusation. She quickly scanned her mental checklist, recalling that their order had been placed only 15 minutes ago, hardly enough time for concern. Still, she nodded understandingly. "I'll check with the kitchen right away, sir," she replied, keeping her tone calm and professional. "Is there anything else I can assist you with in the meantime?" Her response seemed to irritate him further. Instead of acknowledging her effort to resolve the issue, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His smirk widened into something uglier, more predatory. "Oh, look at that," he drawled, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "She speaks. I was starting to wonder if you even understood what we were saying." A hush fell over the immediate area, as nearby diners paused mid-conversation to glance at the unfolding scene. Some exchanged uncomfortable looks, unsure whether to intervene or simply observe. Others pretended not to notice, focusing intently on their meals as if trying to will themselves invisible. Even the background music seemed to fade into the distance, leaving only the weight of the man's words hanging heavily in the air. Maya's cheeks flushed, but she forced herself to remain composed. Years of experience had taught her that reacting emotionally would only escalate the situation. "I assure you, sir," she said evenly, her voice steady despite the knot tightening in her stomach. "Your order is being prepared as quickly as possible. If there's any specific concern, I'd be happy to address it." But the man wasn't satisfied. In fact, his demeanor grew increasingly hostile with each passing second. He waved a dismissive hand, as though her explanation meant nothing. "You don't need to assure me of anything," he sneered. "What I need is for you to do your job properly, or maybe this isn't the right place for someone like you." The phrase, "someone like you," hung in the air like a dagger, its implications clear. Maya froze, her mind racing as she processed the insult. She had heard similar comments before, remarks laced with prejudice and condescension, but they stung just as much now as they ever had. For a brief moment she considered walking away, retreating to the safety of the kitchen where she could collect herself, but something inside her refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. Taking a deep breath, she squared her shoulders and met his gaze directly. "I apologize if there has been any misunderstanding," she said, her voice soft, but unwavering. "I'll ensure your meal arrives promptly." With that, she turned on her heel and walked briskly toward the kitchen, her steps measured and deliberate. Though outwardly composed, her heart pounded in her chest and her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the tray she held. Back at the table, the man's friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them cleared his throat, attempting to lighten the mood with a weak joke. Another glanced nervously around the room, clearly aware of the growing tension. But the man himself seemed unfazed, leaning back in his chair with a smug grin plastered across his face. He had made his point, or so he thought, and appeared content to bask in the aftermath of his cruelty. Unbeknownst to him, however, his actions had not gone unnoticed. Across the room, Vin Diesel watched the entire exchange unfold with mounting unease. From his vantage point at the corner table, he had a clear view of the altercation, and what he saw disturbed him deeply. It wasn't just the man's blatant disrespect that bothered him, it was the casualness with which it was delivered, as if belittling someone based on their race and profession was perfectly acceptable behavior. Diesel's jaw tightened as he observed Maya's reaction. He saw the way her smile faltered for the briefest of moments, the way her shoulders stiffened as she absorbed the insult. Yet, he also saw her resilience, the quiet strength that allowed her to maintain her composure despite the obvious provocation. It reminded him of countless others who had faced similar indignities, often silently enduring because speaking up might lead to retaliation or dismissal. As the man continued to mock Maya under his breath, Diesel felt a familiar surge of anger rising within him. He had spent much of his life advocating for equality and justice, using his platform to amplify marginalized voices whenever possible. This was no different. Sitting idly by while someone was treated unfairly was not an option. Not for him, and certainly not tonight. Without hesitation, he pushed his chair back and stood up, his towering frame immediately drawing attention. The movement caused several heads to turn, including those of the man and his friends. Diesel didn't say a word as he began walking toward their table, his strides purposeful and deliberate. Each step seemed to echo louder than the last, cutting through the tense silence that had settled over the room. When he reached the table, Diesel planted himself firmly beside the offending man, his presence alone enough to command respect. For a moment, nobody spoke. The man looked up at him, his smirk fading as recognition dawned. It was clear from his expression that he hadn't expected anyone, let alone someone of Diesel's stature, to confront him. But Diesel wasn't here to intimidate. He was here to set things straight. With a calm but authoritative tone, Diesel addressed the man directly. "Do you have a problem?" he asked, his deep voice resonating through the space. Every eye in the restaurant was on them now, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Whatever happened next would define the rest of the evening, and perhaps leave a lasting impression on everyone present. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as Vin Diesel stood towering over the table, his imposing figure casting a shadow that seemed to shrink the man in the suit. The sharp contrast between Diesel's quiet authority and the man's drunken arrogance was palpable. For a moment, time seemed to freeze, with every diner in the restaurant turning their attention to this unexpected confrontation. Plates were set down, forks paused mid-air, and conversations faded into whispers. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. The man at the center of the commotion blinked, clearly caught off guard by Diesel's sudden appearance. His smug grin faltered for the first time that evening, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. He squinted up at Diesel, trying to place the face staring down at him. Recognition dawned slowly, and when it did, his expression shifted from confusion to something resembling panic, but even then he couldn't resist attempting to salvage his bravado. Hey man," the man stammered, his voice noticeably less confident than before. "Is there a problem here?" He tried to sound nonchalant, but the slight tremor in his tone betrayed his unease. His friends, sensing the shift in power dynamics, exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to speak up or stay silent. One of them cleared his throat awkwardly while another leaned back in his chair, visibly shrinking into himself. Diesel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he crossed his arms over his chest, his stance unwavering. His dark eyes locked onto the man's, radiating a calm intensity that left no room for misinterpretation. The actor wasn't here to make small talk or issue idle threats. He had come to deliver a message, and he intended to do so with clarity and conviction. When he finally spoke, his deep, resonant voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Yes, there is a problem," Diesel said firmly, his words deliberate and measured. "I watched how you treated that young woman just now, and let me tell you something. You don't get to talk to people like that. Not in my presence and not anywhere else." His statement hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The man blinked again, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for a response. But Diesel wasn't finished. Leaning slightly forward, he lowered, his voice, though it remained loud enough for those nearby to hear. "You've got two choices here. You can apologize to her right now, sincerely, or you can leave this restaurant. And trust me, buddy, I suggest you choose wisely." The weight of Diesel's words settled over the room like a thundercloud. There was no mistaking the seriousness in his tone. This wasn't an empty warning. It was a challenge, issued not just to the man but to anyone who might think twice about treating others with disrespect. The man's friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their earlier bravado evaporating completely. They knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, a rare moment where celebrity status intersected with moral courage. For several seconds, the man said nothing. His face flushed red, partly from embarrassment and partly from the alcohol still coursing through his veins. He glanced around the room, perhaps hoping for some kind of support from his companions or even from the other diners. But all he found were disapproving stares and uncomfortable silence. Even his own friends avoided meeting his eyes, unwilling to be associated with his behavior any longer. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man mumbled something under his breath. It wasn't coherent at first, but when Diesel raised an eyebrow expectantly, he forced himself to repeat it louder. "Look, I'm sorry, okay?" he muttered, his voice gruff and reluctant. "Didn't mean anything by it." Diesel didn't move, his gaze unwavering. "That apology isn't for me," he reminded the man pointedly. "It's for her." He tilted his head slightly toward Maya, who stood a few feet away, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. She hadn't expected this turn of events, no one had, but she could feel the energy in the room shifting. The humiliation she had felt moments earlier was beginning to give way to something else. Validation. Someone had seen her struggle, acknowledged her humanity, and stepped in to defend her. The man hesitated, clearly reluctant to follow through, but the pressure mounted with each passing second. The entire restaurant was watching, waiting to see if he would have the decency to do the right thing. Finally, with a defeated sigh, he turned his head toward Maya. "Sorry," he muttered, again barely audible. "Didn't mean to offend you." Maya nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. She didn't say anything, nor did she need to. Her silence spoke volumes, a quiet testament to her resilience and dignity. Diesel gave her a subtle nod of encouragement before turning his attention back to the man. "Good," he said simply, his tone softening ever so slightly. "Now finish your meal, or don't. Either way, remember this moment, the next time you feel like being disrespectful." Without another word, Diesel straightened up and stepped back, allowing the man to stew in his discomfort. The group of friends quickly began gathering their belongings, eager to escape the spotlight. Within moments, they were hurrying toward the exit, their earlier swagger replaced by hunched shoulders and hurried footsteps. As the door swung shut behind them, a ripple of applause broke out across the room. At first, it was tentative, a few claps here and there, but soon it grew into a full-fledged ovation. Diners rose from their seats, applauding not just Diesel, but also Maya, whose grace under pressure had inspired such a powerful act of solidarity. Some called out words of encouragement, while others simply smiled warmly, offering nods of approval. The atmosphere transformed from tense and uneasy to celebratory and uplifting, as if the entire restaurant had collectively exhaled. Diesel, however, remained humble. He waved off the applause with a modest smile, signaling that the real hero of the night was Maya. Turning to her, he extended a hand, inviting her to join him briefly. Though initially hesitant, Maya accepted, stepping forward to stand beside him. Together they faced the room, united in a shared moment of triumph. "You handled yourself beautifully," Diesel told her quietly, his voice carrying just enough for her to hear. "Don't let anyone ever make you feel small. You're stronger than they'll ever be." Maya's eyes welled with tears, though she blinked them back quickly, determined not to cry in front of everyone. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Diesel replied gently. "Just keep doing what you're doing. People notice even if they don't always show it." With that, he gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder before returning to his table, leaving the crowd buzzing with admiration. Maya took a deep breath, composing herself as best she could, and resumed her duties. But the rest of the evening felt different somehow. Every interaction carried a newfound lightness, as if Diesel's intervention had lifted a weight not just from her shoulders, but from the entire room. As the night wore on, patrons continued to approach Maya, offering kind words and heartfelt thanks. Many praised her professionalism and poise, while others expressed gratitude for Diesel's timely intervention. Social media lit up almost instantly, with witnesses posting photos and videos of the incident, tagging Vin Diesel and sharing their admiration for both him and Maya. By morning, the story would go viral, sparking conversations about respect, accountability, and the importance of standing up for one another. But for now, in the glow of the restaurant's dim lighting and the warmth of shared humanity, the moment belonged to Maya and Diesel, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness and courage can create ripples far beyond what we imagine. As the applause filled the restaurant, a wave of gratitude washed over Maya. She felt a mix of emotions, relief, pride, and even disbelief, that someone like Vin Diesel had stepped in to defend her. It wasn't just the act itself that moved her. It was the way he carried himself with quiet authority and unwavering conviction. In that moment, she realized how much it meant to have someone stand up for you when you least expected it. For days, weeks, or maybe even years, she might remember this night as a turning point, a reminder that she deserved respect, no matter who questioned it. Diesel returned to his table, but he didn't sit down immediately. Instead, he paused, for a moment, scanning the room with an expression that was both thoughtful and resolute. He could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him, their admiration evident in their smiles and nods. But Diesel wasn't seeking praise. What mattered most to him was ensuring that the message had been delivered, not just to the man who had disrespected Maya, but to everyone else present. He wanted them to understand that moments like these weren't about fame or status. They were about humanity. When he finally sat back down, a server approached his table cautiously. "Mr. Diesel," the young man said, his voice tinged with awe. "On behalf of all of us, thank you. That really meant a lot." Diesel smiled warmly, brushing off the compliment with characteristic humility. "It's not about me," he replied, his deep voice soft yet firm. "What happened here tonight shouldn't happen anywhere. We're all human beings, and we owe each other basic decency. If more people spoke up when they saw injustice, the world would be a better place." The server nodded earnestly before excusing himself, leaving Diesel alone with his thoughts. As he sipped the last remnants of his drink, he reflected on what had transpired. The incident reminded him of countless stories he'd heard throughout his life. Stories of individuals being treated unfairly because of their race, gender, or profession. Growing up, Diesel had often found himself in situations where he felt out of place or underestimated. Those experiences shaped him into the person he was today, someone who believed deeply in standing up for others, especially those whose voices might otherwise go unheard. Meanwhile, Maya continued working her shift, though it was clear she was still processing everything that had happened. Customers greeted her with warmth and encouragement, some going out of their way to leave generous tips or express their support. One elderly couple stopped her as she cleared their table. "You handled yourself wonderfully, dear," the woman said kindly. "And Mr. Diesel? Well, he's a true gentleman. Don't let anyone dim your light." Maya thanked them, her smile genuine despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. She couldn't help but replay the confrontation in her mind. The man's cruel words, Diesel's commanding presence, and the overwhelming sense of relief when it was over. For so long, she had internalized moments like these, telling herself to stay strong and keep moving forward. But tonight something felt different. Someone had validated her worth in front of an entire room full of strangers, and it gave her a renewed sense of confidence. Word spread quickly among the staff about what had unfolded. The kitchen crew, who had been oblivious to the drama until Maya returned to drop off dishes, listened intently as she recounted the details. Some expressed outrage at the man's behavior, while others marveled at Diesel's intervention. "That's why I love working here," one of the cooks joked, breaking the tension. Never a dull moment. By the time Maya's shift ended, the restaurant buzzed with excitement. Patrons lingered longer than usual, chatting animatedly about the evening's events. Social media played a key role in amplifying the story, as several diners posted videos and photos online. A clip of Diesel confronting the rude patron went viral almost instantly, garnering thousands of likes, comments, and shares within hours. Fans praised him not only for his courage but also for using his platform to highlight issues of discrimination and inequality. The next morning, news outlets picked up the story, framing it as a powerful example of celebrity activism done right. Headlines like "Vin Diesel stands up against racism" and "Actor defends waitress in viral restaurant incident" dominated social feeds. Journalists reached out to the restaurant for statements, prompting management to release a brief press release commending Diesel's actions and reaffirming their commitment to fostering a respectful environment for employees and customers alike. Amid the media frenzy, Diesel remained characteristically low-key. When reporters asked for interviews, he politely declined, explaining that the focus should remain on Maya and the broader issue of workplace discrimination. "I'm just glad I was there to help," he told one journalist via email DM. The days following the incident felt surreal for Maya. What had started as an ordinary evening at work had transformed into a whirlwind of attention, praise, and reflection. The story of how Vin Diesel stood up for her spread like wildfire, reaching far beyond the walls of the restaurant. Friends and family members called and texted her nonstop, sharing links to articles and videos that featured her name alongside the Hollywood stars. Strangers online flooded comment sections with messages of support, calling her brave and resilient. It was overwhelming, but in a good way. At first, Maya wasn't sure how to process all the attention. She had always been a private person, someone who preferred to keep her head down and focus on her work. Being thrust into the spotlight, even indirectly, felt strange and unfamiliar. But as she scrolled through social media and read some of the heartfelt comments from people around the world, she began to see the bigger picture. This wasn't just about her, it was about something much larger. Her experience had sparked conversations about respect, dignity, and standing up against injustice, topics that resonated deeply with so many others. Meanwhile, the restaurant where the incident took place became busier than ever. Curious patrons flocked there, eager to catch a glimpse of the place where the now famous confrontation had occurred. Some even asked to speak with Maya, hoping to meet the woman whose courage inspired such widespread admiration. Management handled the influx of visitors graciously, ensuring that Maya's privacy was respected, while also acknowledging the significance of the event. They even held a small staff meeting to discuss ways to improve inclusivity and create a safer environment for employees moving forward. For Vin Diesel, life continued as usual, or as close to usual as it could be for someone of his stature. He avoided capitalizing on the incident, choosing instead to let the story speak for itself. In interviews promoting his upcoming projects, reporters inevitably brought up the restaurant encounter, but Diesel remained humble and focused on the message rather than the moment. "It's not about me," he emphasized repeatedly. "It's about recognizing our shared humanity and treating each other with kindness and respect." Despite his reluctance to make the incident the center of attention, fans couldn't stop talking about it. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags like "Bringing Respect Like Diesel" and "Stand with Maya," encouraging people to share their own stories of standing up against discrimination or supporting those who faced unfair treatment. Teachers used the story, in classrooms to spark discussions about empathy and allyship. Community leaders referenced it during talks about workplace equality and racial justice. The ripple effect of that single night extended far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. A week after the incident, Diesel returned to the same restaurant, not for publicity or fanfare, but because he genuinely wanted to check in on Maya. When he arrived, the hostess recognized him immediately and led him to a quiet corner table. Word quickly spread among the staff, and soon Maya was informed of his presence. At first, she hesitated, unsure of what to say or do. After all, this was Vin Diesel, the global icon known for his roles in blockbuster films. And yet here he was going out of his way to connect with her personally. It was humbling, to say the least. Summoning her courage, Maya approached his table, clutching a notepad and pen nervously. "Hi, Mr. Diesel," she said softly, her voice tinged with both gratitude and shyness. "Can I get you anything?" Diesel looked up and smiled warmly, his expression putting her instantly at ease. "Just a coffee would be great, thank you," he replied. Then, gesturing to the chair across from him, he added, "And maybe we can talk for a minute, if you're not too busy." Maya blinked in surprise but nodded eagerly. After placing his order with another server, she sat down opposite him, feeling a mix of excitement and disbelief. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Diesel leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully before breaking the silence. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently. "I imagine the last week has been intense." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "That's one way to put it," she admitted. "It's been a lot to take in, honestly. I never expected something like this to happen, not in a million years, but—" She paused, searching for the right words. "I guess it made me realize how important it is to stand up for yourself and how powerful it can be when someone else stands with you." Diesel nodded approvingly. "Exactly," he said. "You showed incredible strength that night. A lot of people might have walked away or let it slide, but you stayed calm and professional. That takes real character." His words meant more to Maya than he could have imagined. Growing up, she had often doubted her abilities, especially when faced with adversity. Hearing someone like Diesel affirm her resilience gave her a newfound sense of confidence. "Thank you," she murmured, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know if I would have gotten through it without you stepping in." "You would have," Diesel insisted firmly. "But I'm glad I was there to help. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we're not alone, that there are people willing to stand beside us when things get tough." Their conversation flowed naturally from there, touching on everything from Maya's dreams of becoming a writer to Diesel's own experiences with overcoming challenges. He shared stories from his childhood, recalling times when he felt underestimated or dismissed because of his mixed heritage. "There were moments when I wondered if I belonged," he confessed. "But those struggles taught me the value of perseverance and the importance of lifting others up whenever I can." Listening to him, Maya felt a profound connection. Despite their vastly different lives, they shared a common understanding of what it meant to face prejudice and rise above it. By the time their coffee arrived, she felt less like a server speaking to a celebrity and more like a friend sharing a meaningful conversation with someone who truly cared. Before leaving, Diesel handed Maya a folded piece of paper. "This is for you," he said with a wink. Inside was a generous tip, far more than necessary, but also a handwritten note that read, "Keep shining, Maya. The world needs your light." Tears welled up in her eyes as she read the words. In that moment, she realized that the impact of Diesel's actions went far beyond the restaurant or the viral headlines. He had reminded her of her worth and inspired her to keep pushing forward no matter what obstacles lay ahead. As Diesel walked out of the restaurant, the staff gathered around Maya, congratulating her and marveling at the kindness he had shown. For Maya, the experience solidified something she already knew deep down, that even in difficult times there are always people willing to step up and make a difference. And sometimes, those moments of connection can change lives forever.